Yo, what's up guys? d-cellgaming here, back with some more Evertale, and today we're continuing the Roadmap to Success series. I'm going to be talking about how to build up a new account from scratch and what you're going to want to focus on while doing so. These tips are mainly directed towards the free-to-play players, however, all players should be able to find something useful here in this video. And another thing to keep in mind is even though this video is talking about creating an account from scratch, you can use these tips on a pre-existing account and help focus and narrow in on what you should be doing. So without further delay, let's get right into it. So one of the biggest things that I see new players doing wrong, and this just goes beyond Evertale, this is all gacha games, and they have this like really strong need or desire to spend a resource as soon as they get it. You get 1,000 soul stones, you spend it immediately. You get a couple million gold, you spend it immediately on an upgrade. You get some player experience tokens or whatever it is, and you just spend it immediately. If you don't know what to do in any gacha game, always hoard your resources. That's rule number one. Don't spend a resource without knowing what it does and how it's going to impact your account. Holding your resources is always pretty much the thing to do, even for whales, because once you get a new unit that you've been waiting on or wanting, then you have the resources to fully unlock them, and your account will have a much bigger boost than if you just spent those resources on everybody that you have, and now you just have like a bunch of level 80s or level 100 units, and your account is very, very weak. Let's go ahead and look at my battalion so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. When you look at my battalion, you can see that all of my power is placed within a few units. Now, I'm not telling you that these are the units to go for. In fact, I probably would advise against these units as your first ones, unless you're really building something niche. I'm personally building a platoon and a battalion that I think is going to be fun to use, not necessarily trying to top the leaderboards here, but by condensing and focusing my power, you'll see that I'm able to climb and progress a lot further than what most players would be able to do. A level 200 and a fully awakened level 200 at that will wipe the floor with an army of level 100, 120, or even 140 plus units. They're so much stronger at level 180 and level 200 than an entire army that's sitting at 140, especially if they have a drain ability, which I'll go over a little bit further when we're talking about how to set up your new account. You really want to focus on your platoon number one first, and you really just want to build one unit at a time, guys. Ideally, you want to build a DPS unit first, preferably somebody with a drain. Then you want to build like a guard unit for that DPS, and then maybe a support or another DPS after that. And after that, you're gonna just focus on building a unit that synergizes with that platoon, and that's how you go about building your first platoon. So you can see that even though my battalion only has about 30 million, I've still managed to make it to a floor 403 on the Tower of Trials. And if you look at the arena and the wins that I've able to get, like this guy here who has a battalion power of 118 million, and if you look at his setup, he's got a bunch of 160s, 140s, 120s, 140s. His battalion power is stretched too thin. So even though his account power is higher, his effective power is much, much lower than what it could be. So yeah, as you can see, this guy here, he's got 51 million. Lothar, 39 million. Cannibal, 34 million. Meru, 34 million. So all these people have higher battalion power than me, yet I'm winning because I have a concentrated pool of strength within just 2 or 3 units. So this is important because my level 200 units are just kind of mowing through their units. So if you look at my units, I've spent the time and used Lucky Fountain to get a fully awakened Endless Rosette, Mirai, which I didn't really need, I just kind of wanted as a support, and Anya. So these are where I concentrated my power, and my next unit that I'll be concentrating on is going to be Snow White because she is a powerhouse DPS. So once I get her fully awakened at a level 200, then I'm going to focus on a 5th unit. When you go down the row like this, you're going to be building an account power a little bit slower. However, your effective use will be much higher. Another thing that you guys are going to want to do is when you're building up units, always be building a weapon. Characters, on the other hand, are a little different because you are gated buy the limit break potions on characters. They're much harder to get, so you're probably going to want to save up some of your gold and resources. Always have enough set aside to fully level 200 a unit, and then after you have that saved up, then you can kind of start building up units that you just kind of want to play around with. But always have enough set aside to fully awaken your main unit that you're currently building. Aside from that, always be building weapons. You can get fully awakened weapons from events, and you should always be building them up. They don't provide the most power, but they are a big boost. Always be building them up, even though you might have like a level 40 person to equip them on. Just keep building your weapons, keep cranking out your level 200 fully awakened weapons, and then you can focus on boosting them and putting some potential up to about 60 to 65%. That's kind of where the cutoff is. You don't want to go past about 60%, 65 at the very highest, because after that the diminishing returns are so high, it's just not worth it anymore. So how should you go about building your battalion up? Well, you're going to focus on platoon 1, then platoon 2, then platoon 3, etc, etc. You can see that most of mine haven't been brought past level 40 or level 80 is kind of the cutoffs that I use personally. Up to level 40 it just costs gold, and then honestly they should all be at level 80. But there's just not, it's just not useful, and I'll tell you why. Like my level 40 Finn helps carry me through some of the towers because I can put him in there just for his stun entry passive, and he kind of helps my other powerhouse units go about it. So even if he was level 120, he would still get one-shotted by the tower units, so it doesn't really matter. I don't really need to bring him up past level 40 because he's just doing his job at level 40. So I get a lot of people asking me, why do I have some units at level 40 and not level 80 or 100 or what have you? And that's because simply if they're gonna get one-shotted, I don't need to bring them up anyway. If he was level 100 or level 80 or whatever, he would still get one-shotted. I'm still just using him for his stun entry passive. Now if I wanted to fully invest in him, that would be different, but since I'm not fully investing in him, and since I'm working on Snow White right now, I'll be getting her to level 200, I'll be fully awakening her, and then I will move on to my next unit. The next question I get is, should I be fully awakened units or should I be getting new unit? And the answer to that question is kind of hard. For newer accounts, you're gonna want more SSRs unless you're a whale and you can afford to fully awaken a unit as soon as they come out. If you can afford to fully awaken the unit, obviously always go for a fully awakened unit. However, if you're a new account, you're a low spender, you're free to play, you're gonna want to get at least, I would say, 8 SSRs before, maybe even 5. You want your first platoon before you start worrying about fully awakening them. So honestly, 5 to 8 SSRs, then you can kind of start looking at using Lucky Fountain to try to get fully awakened units. I actually started at around 9 or 10 SSRs. That's when I started going for fully awakened units. I just kind of got these other units on accident, basically. So that's how you're going to want to do it. You're going to want to try to build up your roster and your synergies first, and then once you have your roster built up, then you're going to want to try to focus on getting them fully awakened. Obviously you want to level them up to at least 180. I would say a level 180 and a level 200, there's not that much difference if they're fully awakened, but still you're gonna want to pretty much finish a unit and then move on to the rest. Another reason that you really want to focus down on your platoon 1 is the raids. It will really help you completing raids and getting more resources if you have a stronger platoon 1. At 22 million, I can solo a 65 million boss. So if I have to, if I come in late and I don't have a group that I can get to, I can solo these bosses with my platoon 1. And if you do that, you're still getting your resources, and that's what matters for your account progression. Having 1 or 2 very strong units will really help you grind out the side stories, because then you can clear all the way up to the EX10 stages and grind it out. Then you can build your story units up in a way where you're getting a lot of resources. As you can see, I get about 2,600 for tomorrow's Tender Melodies because of the units that I chose to fully awaken, and I have some extra weapons and so on and so forth. But yeah, as you start building up your account, you'll see that yes, you will have an easier time in story progression. You'll have an easier time in side story progression, in raid progression. And even though you don't have a really high attack or a really high battalion power spread across the board, you're still useful in raids. You can create like some fodder units and some fodder battalion to really help weaken other players for the alliance wars. You don't have to try to get all level 160s, 140, whatever. Don't do that, guys. Focus on one at a time, and that's how you're gonna get the most bang for your buck. The most asked question I get about this game is, who should my first SSR be? I don't think people realize how hard of a question this is, so I'll try to break it down the best way that I can. You really need to focus on a synergy. The synergy doesn't matter that much as long as you go all in on that synergy. Now, with that said, I would stay away from like dream synergies, maybe even stealth. Stealth is strong, but unless you know what you're doing, it's harder to utilize. I would stay away from summon teams. They can be fun, and especially with Snow White, she's very strong. However, these are much more niche teams that are probably going to be a lot harder for you to utilize as a new player or a new account. You're going to focus on burns or poison or stun. I would probably suggest some kind of burn unit. There's a lot of burn units to synergize with, and you can find one, say like Fire Astrid for example. She can self-regenerate, she does a decent amount of damage, and she has a high HP pool. And at the end of the day, she is a solid DPS slash supporting unit, so she would be a good first unit, for example. You want somebody with a drain and some sort of DPS ability. So look for somebody who has a drain attack, whether it be savage drain, you know, poison drain, whatever it is. Some way for them to deal damage and heal themselves back up, and then build a unit or a platoon of synergy around them. So if you go with Dark Rosette instead of going the way I did it, you're probably going to want to get the Earth Astrid, who really synergizes with the poison. I would suggest going burn, stun, or poison first, because these are three really easy synergies to utilize and figure out and just put together. You don't really have to think about them a whole lot. As long as one thing is happening, the synergy works. I would probably recommend poison the least, because it is the least useful in like the overall meta. However, if you're just playing the game to have fun, complete side stories, and you just want a fun team, it can be fine. It can work just fine. Don't worry so much about what everybody else is doing if you're not playing competitively. If you're not playing competitively, who cares what the meta is if you're having fun? Now, that being said, if you do kind of want to try to compete, I wouldn't suggest going poison. Try to go for a burn first, probably a crisis unit, because crisis units are incredibly fast. They hit really hard, and that is pretty much the go-to. For example, in my team, when I come across a full crisis team, 90% of that team goes before every single one of my characters, because they're that much faster than my comp. But at the end of the day, I don't really care. I can get into, like, I think the highest rank I've gotten is rank 64 in the arena. It's just not something I worry too much about. But if you're worried about it, go with burns first. Again, find somebody that has a drain. If you have a question about it, join our Discord and ask. Make friends within the community and ask them, hey, is this a good unit to invest in? That's really how you want to go about this. Find somebody that can carry you, and then build around that carry unit. And before you know it, you're going to have a full-on platoon 1 that's got about 40 million, battalion power, and you're just clearing anything with ease. And then you can start building up your platoon 2. So that's going to be it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video or found it helpful. If you did, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any other tips that you would like to provide. Have any questions? Let us know. Links to the Discord down below if you're interested in joining our community. And as always, guys, I'll see you next time.